Welcome back to Viewpoint. I'm Jim Zogby, and my next guest is Michael Isikoff. He's National Investigative Correspondent for NBC News, former investigative correspondent for Newsweek magazine. He's written extensively on presidential politics, national security, and intelligence, and is co-author of the book Hubris, the Inside Story of Spin, Scandal, and the Selling of the Iraq War. It's up on the screen. If you haven't read the book, you ought to, because I actually want to start not on the topic we were going to talk about, but on another topic that sort of came to mind as I was preparing for you today, and that is what is going on with Iran right now. Right. Do you see parallels?
Well, you know, it's funny you should mention that, because I've been getting a lot of questions about that lately, and I think people are seeing parallels, and of course, to some extent, there are. The sort of drumbeat of we have to take proactive military action. We have to. There's a potentially dangerous threat around the corner, and based on secret intelligence that's very hard for people to evaluate and see just how strong it is. I mean, there's one critical difference, obviously, which is 10 years ago, and we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of the selling of the war, the congressional authorization to go to war in Iraq. We had a White House that was absolutely committed to making this happen, that wanted to attack Iraq and wanted to, and were doing everything they could. Now we have a White House that is highly conflicted on the subject and ambivalent.
But you've got Lindsey Graham and Joe Lieberman pushing a Senate bill, basically to authorize, but without the White House wanting it. I was trying to remember,
kind of
was there ever been a time in history where Congress approved a war without the White House wanting it?
Offhand, I can't think of it. It's usually the president asks the...
And then Congress fights tooth and nail, but then gives in.
So, look, obviously, if we're coming up on a presidential election later this year, and if one of the Republican contenders were to win, anybody other than Ron Paul, we'd be in a very different situation. Then we really would have a parallel. But it's not clear to me that the Obama White House is really relishing to attack Iran. So that's the big difference, right? Yeah.
If you haven't read the book, Hubris, it's worth reading, and thanks for writing it.
Thank you for the plug.
I want to go back to this election.
Yes.
This is the first presidential election since Citizens United, and we're seeing this phenomenon of super PACs playing out in a significant way. The amounts are huge.
Oh, they're staggering. They're unlike anything we've seen before.
Let's look at. I have a board of it. I just want to put them up and take. Oh, we don't. The board's not ready, so we'll take a pass on it right now. But I want to ask the question this way. It seems to me that there are several of the candidates who would not be in this race right now if it weren't for super PACs underwriting their candidacy.
Well, a couple things are worth keeping in mind. First of all, that the super PACs are outspending the presidential campaigns themselves, which in and of itself is pretty eye-popping.
Santorum got outspent 30-1 by his super PAC in Iowa.
Super PAC. And of course, the difference between the super PACs and the presidential campaigns, you and I can't contribute more than $2,500 to a presidential campaign. But super PACs can take unlimited amounts from wealthy donors, from corporations, from labor unions, anybody who wants to give. And basically what we've ended up with is a small number of billionaires who are financing the attack ads in this presidential election. And they are making a difference. Let's go back to Iowa. The first week in January, the first week in December, Newt Gingrich is #1 in the polls in Iowa, 28%. Then the Romney super PAC, funded by a lot of Bain Capital guys, private equity guys, hedge fund moguls, start flooding the airwaves with attack ads on Gingrich, take him down, cut his support to 13%. Gingrich is on the ropes. Then Romney's up, wins New Hampshire. You go into South Carolina. Sheldon Adelson, the Las Vegas casino magnate billionaire, starts pumping money up to $10 million, actually his family $11 million, into the Gingrich super PAC, and they take Romney down in South Carolina. So there's been this seesaw depending on which super PAC funded by which billionaires are carrying the day, and you can argue there's got to be a more
And
rational
Santorum, who won
way.
Iowa,
Yeah.
actually had, much like Howard Dean,
Yeah.
as the two frontrunners were knocking each other off, he sort of crept in with his super PAC outspending his campaign 30 to 1.
Right, right.
Literally
And he's
funding his campaign.
He's
in the
got
state.
a billionaire out in Wyoming, Foster Friess, who's been funding his super PAC. At the same time, he's flying around with Santorum. Foster Friess is advising him, being part of his inner circle.
That's one of the questions
These super
that-
PACs are supposed to be independent. They're supposed to not coordinate.
Has there been enough scrutiny of these guys? I mean, Sheldon Adelson is a very, one could say, interesting, strange, possibly criminal character. I mean, in terms of his gambling casino
he's
stuff
certainly
in
a
China.
controversial guy. There's
Okay.
a Justice Department investigation
Is-
into his operations in
Is there
in
enough
Macau.
known about these guys? I mean, if the candidates become wholly owned subsidiaries of these billionaires who are basically bankrolling the campaigns,
Right.
shouldn't we know as much about them as we do about their?
Oh, absolutely.
the
And I
personal
think
life of
that's
the
why
candidate?
we're trying to do as much as we can in terms of covering them. But, you know, we're only seeing a portion of the story because the really big super PACs, including the Obama super PAC now and the American Crossroads, which is the Karl Rove super PAC, also have these 501c4 nonprofit arms, which are really a funnel for secret money. And in fact, if you look at the Obama Super PAC's latest filing, you see that its operating expenses are being funded by their secret money nonprofit arm. So we don't even know who's putting that money in.
Let's take a look. We've got the board.
Yeah.
It's ready to go up. The candidates, here it is, Restore Our Future. Romney, 25 million, 37 million raised. Winning Our Future, Gingrich is 13 million, 11 of that from the Adelsons.
Right.
Make America Great Again, Perry is 5 million.
Right.
And on down. I mean, even Ron Paul has his
Yeah.
very own super PAC, about 3 million, largely funded by the PayPal guy, who's
Right.
2.6 million on his own
Right.
into it. Everybody's in it. Obama has lagged behind thus far and gave a push last week.
Well,
a bit of a controversial
right. Well,
push.
first of all, I mean, that really was stunning to see the Obama people embrace this, because Obama in 2010 was going around the country during the closing weeks of the election denouncing this and saying that the whole super PAC phenomenon were people who were hijacking our democracy and allowing special interests to dictate who gets elected to Congress. Well, that didn't fly, of course, as a Democratic talking point, because the Republicans won big in the 2010 election, and now he's embraced it. And you know, in some ways, it was even just to see Obama, who sort of made a principled stand on this, just say, well, if we can't beat them, let's join them. We're not going to unilaterally disarm, I think was disheartening to a lot of good government types who expected better of Barack Obama.
If you want to get in the conversation, give us a call from overseas. The number is 001-202-420-5665. Here in the U.S., it's 1-202-420-5730. You mentioned no coordination. I mean, one of the issues here is that there's to be no coordination, but
Right.
you have Foster Friess flying around on the plane with Santorum.
Right.
Paul Thiel has a close relationship with Paul.
The Romney super PAC is
are
run
all
by
of
3
his-
former political
Right.
aides from his last campaign.
And the same with the Obama campaign.
In fact, just a little irony today, the Romney super PAC went up with an ad about, a positive ad about Romney and about how he intervened to help find the daughter of a Bain Capital employee back in New York back in the 1990s, makes Romney look really good, take charge. It's word for word the same as an ad run by the Romney campaign back in the 2000 cycle. So now, of course, why? Because they have the campaign ad guy who ran did the ads for the last campaign is now working for the super PAC. So if you think these people aren't talking to each other, they aren't, they aren't aware of what they're doing, I don't think there are a lot of people who take that seriously.
Is this what the Supreme Court intended when they passed the...
I think the Supreme Court was not really looking at how this would play out. It was looking at it very much from this a sort of airy constitutional theoretical viewpoint of what's free speech, without sort of a grounding in, as a practical matter, how it was going to turn out. And by the way, I've gotten some criticism on stuff I've said on air and written. It wasn't all Citizens United. There were other, there were FEC rulings that played a role, that ushered in this. There was another court ruling after Citizens United in a Court of Appeals case that kind of gave the blessing to this. It was all part of a sort of a mishmash, but the same perspective, which is that we're not going to have limits on free speech, on advocacy by outside groups. And once you do that, you've opened the door to what we're seeing now.
My office is a block from Lafayette Park, another block from the White House, and I sometimes spend my lunchtime over in the park, sitting and reading and eating a sandwich.
Good place to do it, yeah.
And I love to watch people go by and hear them talk with each other. Today, very sunny day, a father, maybe in his 30s, with a son, probably 6, 7 years old, was walking by, and the son says, "The White House, can we go there, Dad?"
Yeah.
And the father said, "No, we can't." And the boy said, "Why?" And his father said, "Because you either have to know somebody or write a big fat check."
Right.
Right. And
well,
truer words never spoken.
Right. I don't think that's entirely new in American politics, but I think what we're seeing in this election is taking it to a degree that we just haven't seen before.
Is there going to be a backlash?
Well, John McCain, of course, who was authored the McCain-Feingold law, co-authored it, that's essentially been eviscerated, said by the time this election is through, we're going to see a major scandal. And I think that, until that happens,
there has to be a scandal.
There has to be a scandal for the American public to really, and Congress to do something about this, because while there isn't anybody you talk to who will defend the system as it exists now, there's not going to be any consensus to change it unless there's true public outrage, and that will only happen when somebody's caught with a scandal.
And so Sheldon Adelson's 11 million or Harold Simmons' 12 million isn't enough to...
In and of itself, apparently not.
Let's take a call from California. Yeah. Caller, question. Hello? Your question.
California?
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, your question, please?
Sir, yes. I just wanted to say that I think this is cooked, no matter what rhetoric that anybody tells me. Obama, what he had to do.
I'm sorry. Listen, the connection is pretty bad, and I'm not picking you up here, so I'm going to let you go. On the fundraising issue, the Obama numbers, they were projecting, or it was projected for them, that he'd go to a billion.
Yeah.
And he's in the 100 million range now, and frankly, nobody quite thinks he's going to get to where he is. Why is it so low, and is that why they had to fall back on the super PAC?
Well, I think if you count the DNC, they're north of 100. It's more like 250 to 300 million. So they're maybe 25 to 30% there. And I think once there's a general election opponent, you're going to see a lot more money coming in once it's against somebody. I think in part, look, a lot of the big money that he got last time from Wall Street folks and some of the hedge fund crowd, and just is not with him this time because they were disenchanted with things like Dodd-Frank and some of his other regulatory moves. But I think at the end of the day, he's going to be well funded. He is the president. There is the power of the incumbency, and I think that $1 billion figure is a part of what has fueled the money pouring in on the Republican side. Karl Rove has been sort of using that as a talking point. Obama's going to have $1 billion. We've got to have $1 billion on our own. So you got an arms race going on, and we may well have a $2 billion election before this is over.
Thank God for TiVo.
Yeah, all right.
Texas, please. For those of you who didn't quite get it, what I meant was you can then delete the commercials when you get there.
Right.
Let's go to Texas. Caller?
Hello.
Yes, hi.
I wanted to ask the gentleman what he thought because of the super PACs. What's the chance of both houses plus the presidency going Republican?
Okay, thank you.
Look, a lot can change between now and November, and the Republicans, do certainly have a shot at the Senate. The numbers favor them. There are more Democratic incumbents leaving and more Democratic seats open that have to be defended. But look, everything obviously is going to depend on the economy for Obama. If the economy is on the upswing, if people perceive that things are getting better, even if they're not, even if the numbers are still pretty bad, obviously that's going to favor the president. There are wild cards out there like Iran, like potential disruptions in the oil supplies, and how does that play out? But Obama's got a lot of strengths. We're coming up on a couple of months on the anniversary of bin Laden, and I think that does do a lot to take away the traditional Republican National Security Guard. I remember saying the week after the bin Laden thing, a lot can change between now and Election Day, but one thing is certain. Bin Laden will still be dead.
Yeah.
And Obama does have that card to play. We expect to hear a lot more about it.
Thanks for joining us, Mike Isikoff. Up next, AP reporter Matt Apuzzo, who helped uncover the New York City Police Department's covert spying on ethnic communities. Don't go away.